And welcome back. This is ED 653 Supervision. I'd like to discuss follow-up number 2 this evening. Hopefully you've had a chance to open up the follow-up and take a look. As you remember, in true Goucher fashion, we have directions in the column Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, and then there's also directions in the rubric. So I'd like to go over those a little bit now at this point in time. For this follow-up, what you're going to be asked to do is to basically do a pre-observation conference and then a quantitative observation tool. We will talk about this in the next couple of sessions, quantitative being something that you can measure numerically, such as time on task, the rigor of questions, gender, teacher contact, something along those lines. It does say using the selected tool, which you can either use a tool that's in the text or you can create your own way to tally the information. You will collect data that you will need to compile and analyze and reflect on. What's listed here also is the Marzano approach, and you can certainly use any of the information in Marzano. Look at some of those categories as to what you want to zoom in for your reflection, but also Danielson. The Danielson model is acceptable for this observation. For Part A, what you're going to look at is the Marzano 9 strategies or the Danielson framework. So depending on what you're most familiar with, that's where you're going to zoom in on your focus for the observation with the teacher. The tool, again, will be some type of chart or method to collect the data. You also need to think about fair and ethical supervisory practices or the athletics ethics. So you be sure to select one of those. For this observation, you're going to do a 20-minute observation. It's not the full lesson. You will do a full lesson when you do follow-up number 3. You're going to collect the quantitative data, and then this part of the paper asks you to compile the data in a table, chart, and graph, and also analyze your findings. So keep in mind that you will collect it and then you will need to display it. So if you're taking your data on a tally sheet, you also need to translate that into this chart or table and then also graph and analyze your findings. So when you're doing your compilation, your analysis, you need to be thinking about what the actual data says and make your connections as you're writing that. Also keep in mind fair and ethical supervisory practices, which has been a theme that we used in the first paper. For Part C, you're going to prepare a written memo to the teacher that provides the feedback. You will give 2 to 3 commendations, and you will give 1 to 2 recommendations. For this part, you just do a separate page in the paper, and that's actually a copy of the memo that you've written. When you share the memo, you will be talking with the teacher about feedback and reaction, and that's something that you're going to discuss when you get to Part 4. When you get to Part 4 or Part D, you will give a summary of the reflection in which you analyze your experience conducting the observation and providing feedback. You want to talk about the tool that you used. You also want to talk about ethical supervisory practices. You want to talk about the teacher's reaction, and of course you can substitute in coach for any of these as well, if that's who you choose to observe. And then your feedback. Based on the experiences, think about your implications for you as a supervisor. In other words, how are you going to grow during this experience, and what can you do additionally to support your growth, and then references to course content. When we look at Part A in the rubric, we're going to just zoom in on Part 4 includes how the tool supports fair and ethical practices. When we look at the second part, Part B, you want to have clear connection to the readings, so somewhere you want to weave in Glickman and any articles that are posted that you've chosen to read to support it. The data is presented in a chart, table, or graph, and also fair and ethical is included. When you get to Part C, it's the memo with the commendations and recommendations and specific behaviors targeted. Then when you get to Part D, the final reflection, there's ethical practices, clear implications for you as a supervisor, and references to course content. And then, of course, the last part is the APA for communication. So you want to make sure that you address all of the key pieces of APA formatting, and that is well written. So this is just, again, a brief overview of follow-up number 2. We will be zooming in on exactly what you're going to observe and how you're going to collect your data in the next couple of sessions, but I wanted to give you this overview so that you have the information. Please don't hesitate to call, text, or email if you have questions regarding this assignment. Thanks.